Oh, thank you very much. Thanks very much for inviting me here today to speak. It's a great opportunity to get in front of so many people, and hopefully we can all make it worth your while. I've just got to work out how to use this thing. So I've got a couple of challenges before we start. I started writing this and it kept getting longer and longer and longer. I've got half an hour, so we might have to get stuck into it, and I apologise now if I have to flick through a few through the middle, because I just want to sort of make sure I get to my points at the end. And it's about 65 degrees in here, so hopefully everyone can stick with it. And I will be encouraging a bit of interactivity later. So just go through. So I'm not going to talk a lot today about what we do. I'm just going to talk more about the opportunities that are out there and what we need to do as business operators. I'm going to talk to us as a group today, as all business people, whether you're service providers or farmers in general. So just before we start, can I get an indication, everyone who actually farming at the moment, like producers, hands up? Yep, so other service providers, consultants, agents. Well, that's good, I can pay out on them later. They will get a bit later. So farm 20 k's north of Stawell, Campbell's Bridge. Mixed farming, 5,500 ewes we're currently joining at the moment, of which 50% are joined to merinos and 50% are joined back to white Suffolks. July, August lambing, so shearing at the moment and getting ready for lambing. Alongside dry land cropping, hay production, got a lamb finishing system to finish all our crossbred and merino lambs, and also have a bit to do with a merino stud at Manu, so that's just a bit of a sideline. So back to the Nuffield, currently doing my Nuffield scholarship. Thanks to AWI, I see there's a couple of representatives in the room today. And the topic I started out with was research ways technology can help modernise and improve profitability within the sheep industry. So, as Jason said before, that's evolved a little bit as we went. And the current situation is I've done my global focus program, travelled the world, seen a crazy amount of things in regard to farming in general and technology. I've seen the good. That's just an example of a high pressure processor that's taken that juice from a 2-day shelf life to a 32-day shelf life. So that's something that could evolve into the meat industry. It's basically like putting something thousands of metres under the ocean, just to basically, make it airtight. I've seen some things that weren't so good. This was a 5,000 head goat dairy in the Netherlands. The bloke owned 2 acres of land in the middle of town, milking 5,000 goats. And he even let us out the back to have a look through his nursery. And, we want to talk lamb survival and things like that, and his goat survival was horrendous. But, it's just things like that, all the stuff we saw wasn't good. And then I saw some questionable things. I think that one was in Chile. Still manually bagging potatoes, because why would you want a machine to do that? The big issues around the world that I've seen, ones that relate back to farming here, they're all the same wherever we go around the world at the moment. And the 4 I've put there is land prices continually on the move, water issues, availability, use, sustainability of all that, cost of labour, and our increasing cost of production all the time. So they're the 4 I've identified there. And then as far as the bigger issues go, we've got provenance. People want to know where a produce is coming from. They want to know a story behind it, and that's going to be more and more increasingly important going forward. Social licence, it's a massive one. If you haven't paid much attention to it, I think everyone in the room should start, because it's going to be a massive issue going forward. And we don't necessarily have a right to farm going forward. We need to protect that, and we need to do what we can to put ourselves on the front foot rather than wait till the activists come after us for different things. Customer consumer, it's all about the customer. We produce, whatever we do, there's an end user, so just be mindful of that end user. And sustainability. Everywhere I went, I heard sustainability, but the question is what is sustainability? And everyone, I think, has a different perception on what sustainability is. And I think it's important that you understand what your perception of sustainability is, but I think at the end of the day, we need to make enough money so we can stay in the game. The other 4 points I've got here is education versus trust. So in the whole social licence thing, sustainability, we hear a lot about education. I think it's going to be extremely difficult to educate people going forward. There's just too many of them in the big cities and around the world where we're going to be able to educate. So I think we need to really look to things that we can do to increase our level of trust between, the customers and the consumers of the world and what we do. We don't need necessarily to, explain everything we do and show everyone exactly why we do it and how we do it. But what we do need to do is develop a level of trust, which means that if you walk in the supermarket and buy meat or buy anything else that's been produced on farm, that there's a certain level of trust that goes with that product, that they walk out being happy, that they're happy, that it's been treated well, or we've done the right things, as far as chemical goes, animal handling and all that sort of thing. So I think it's the whole trust thing, and a lot of that's on us, is to, if we do the right things, behind our farm gates, I think that'll flow through, and we just need to get rid of those bad eggs that are giving us a bad name. So if you see anything that goes on, or something's going on that you don't like, I think it's upon us a little bit to sort of set the bar a little bit higher maybe than where it's currently set at the moment. I've got social media there. I think we need to be very careful of social media. It's a massive thing these days, but I think we've just got to be careful of what we read, and we don't believe everything that's on there. And also, if we're going to post things on there, try and keep it calm and keep it sophisticated. And when we're posting other things on there, just be aware of who's going to see it, why you're putting it there, and that maybe there's sometimes where we shouldn't put things on there at all. The Impossible Burger, that's here to stay in a lot of big chains. Beyond Meat, another company that's doing the fake meat burgers. So it's here to stay. It's going to be in all the big chains soon. So we need to get used to competing against that in the red meat industry. And mulesing's another one. Regardless of everyone's thoughts on mulesing, it's just definitely, it's an issue around the world. I heard it time and time again. It's certainly an issue, and we need to address it in some form. And the quicker we do that, the better off we're going to be. So back to the technology side of things. So when we look at ag tech, I've just put up there, is it a buzzword or does it have any substance? Can I get that one going? No, that's all right. Oh no, it is going. Yep. So ag tech, I've just put buzzword or any substance there. So what I mean by that is, we see a lot of stuff on ag tech, but is there any substance behind it, and is there things that we can do, or the tools that are out there for us to improve what we do? So I've said here, there's no silver bullet. We need to have a plan, and we need to know what you want to achieve. You need to know what you want to do better. It's critical that tech is developed for a need rather than someone who thinks that they've just got a great idea. And the developers need to know what we want. So if you've got a good idea, you need to find an avenue to get that across to someone, because they don't necessarily know what we want if we're not good at telling them. Don't let the squeaky wheels of the world drive mainstream tech. I think we see a lot of industries that, the minority complain about a lot of things, and if they're the ones that drive these different programs and technology, maybe they're not mainstream. So if you're happy with something, say you're happy with something. If you're not happy with something, say you're not happy with it, but give them reasons why. They're all fighting for the same pool of money. As producers, we've only got a certain amount of money we can spend, and they're all fighting over that. So if 20 ag tech producers think that we're going to come along and pay them a subscription or something like that, we're going to have to start making a hell of a lot more money, or someone's going to miss out. Just touching on that subscription-based model, that seems to be the way a lot of the tech companies want to go. So just keep an eye on your credit card, because we're going to wake up one day and we're going to be subscribed to 25 different things, and paying $30 a month for all these things, and we might only be using 2 apps on our phone. And we're going to see a lot more in this space, and we're already starting to see a shift at the moment from the pre-gate, so the pre-harvest stuff to the post-harvest stuff. There's always been a movement away. People are the ag tech industry. I think there's a few people within it starting to get sick of farmers already, because they don't think that they can make enough money out of us. So they're shifting their focus to the sort of post-harvest stuff where they think there's maybe a bit more value. And that's just a diagram of all the different ag tech startups that there are around at the moment, and Ag Funder suggests at the moment there's north of 1,600 at the moment. So I'd be surprised of those 1,600 in the board if 10 or 20 of them become mainstream. So everyone who's trying to sell you something, just as I said on my earlier point, make sure you know what you want. So I've just said here, is it an awesome Christmas present or a valuable business tool? I think we get technology confused a lot of the time between something we want for Christmas or something the kids want compared to something that can really add value to our business. So I've just listed a few things there that I think, the obvious ones: we need to solve a problem, save time, needs to make money, improve accuracy, or, increase compliance, or simply sometimes it can be just improving the ability to do something or increasing the number of people who can do that task. So it might be just a sheep handler that maybe it doesn't speed up things, it mightn't save you money, but what it does is it allows someone else, older people, your parents to help you for longer or something like that. So I think it's important that we cover all those. Some of the technologies I looked at along the way included virtual fencing, smart tags, robotic shearing, autonomous vehicles, remote monitoring, management softwares, EID, which we'll talk a bit about later, sheep handling equipment, genomics, and DEXA, I think, has got a big future in the red meat industry. So we can touch on some of these a bit later if we get a bit of time. So this has evolved. I see farm management, after travelling the world, as probably the hardest job in the world. Honestly, one of the hardest jobs in the world. We need to evolve from, the old traditional view that most people have of farmers with a bit of straw in their mouth and a pitchfork, to something like, autonomous vehicles. That's a seed dot. I'm not sure if many of you have seen those around. Canadian-made autonomous seeder. So it's basically a platform for autonomy. I think it's one of the coolest things in the world at the moment, and I think it will make it. I think it's got the characteristics behind a real success story. So I've said it's not rain, it's not markets, it's you. As business operators, it doesn't matter whether you're farmers here, you're running consultancy businesses, whatever else you do, you're in charge of what you do. And from a lot of benchmarking stuff, it's the people that change the numbers. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. So it's very important that we come to understand quickly that it's what we do drives how good our business is. We tend to blame a lot of other things. We can say, it doesn't rain, it's a drought, the markets are no good and all that, but in any set of data there's people that are doing well under the same circumstances. So let's make sure we're one of those. So in the whole process of the Nuffield thing, I've evolved to putting businesses first and then technology second. So I think we need to get our businesses right, and it goes back to a lot about what we saw with Greg and Joe speaking this morning. They've covered a lot of those points, which I'll probably go over some of them again, but it just shows, like Paul said, that maybe we need to hear it 2 or 3 times. So if we can hear it 2 or 3 times here today, does that mean you're going to go home and do it? I hope so, because it is the business side of things that we need to get right, and it's something that I think a lot of people don't get right because they focus on the production side of things. So it's all about profit. It's simple as that. It's all about making money, and we need profit in our system to do things. So we need to make profit and then use it to create wealth. It's no good in investing in depreciating assets and things like that. We need to use the profit we make. I believe profit equals lifestyle. People say money doesn't create happiness and lifestyle, but I think it goes a long way. It certainly makes things a lot easier if we've got the money to do what we need to do. And profit also gives us sustainability, both in the fact that we're sustainable going forward. So if we're making money, we're in the game, the next generation can come along if they so wish. And if we're making profit, it also gives us the ability to spend money on other areas of our farm which increase our sustainability, and that can be environmental things, it can be managing waterways, it can be planting trees. But if we don't have money, we can't do any of those other things. So I've just got a few points to run through here that I've just had a bit of a checklist of what I think, the good businesses that I've seen do and do well. And I've put this one up the front because I think it's imperative that, we think about this one. So I've just said farmers today need to capitalise and make money at other people's expenses. And we need to plan for this going forward, invest in areas which allow us to take advantage of someone else before they take advantage of us. And I mean, some people might say that's a bit harsh, but the reality of it is that, we only get certain opportunities a year to make money, and we need to capitalise on those opportunities we get and make money while we can. So a couple of examples of this are the hay market at the moment. People who are lucky enough to be, providers of hay are doing extremely well out of doing so. And lambs. Anyone who's given themselves the ability to put lambs in the market now are being extremely well rewarded for it. But that just doesn't happen. That comes through, and you could also argue that the people that are selling lambs now are taking advantage of the processes, and the people that are selling hay are taking advantage of the people in drought conditions. But reality is that the people who are in those positions have given themselves a business that gives themselves the ability to do that. So you need to plan your business direction. Another thing that Greg and Joe explained really well today, and I think they summed it up perfectly today, is you need to know where you're going, need to know where you want to be, and we need to look longer term. I think some of the best things that I've done since I come home onto the farm is do business courses, not so much farming courses. It's the business side of things we need to get right. And I don't think I've seen Ken Solly in the room today. Ken not here? No. But I saw Ken Solly, many of you would know. I saw him speak at a business forum in Adelaide. I saw him speak at the Birchip Cropping Group. And I saw him speak here, all within about 6 or 8 months of each other. So, basically over a year I heard him 3 times. And probably the one person that changed the way I look at our farm. So maybe that whole thing is true that we need to hear it 2 or 3 times, but it's certainly some of the points that he raised with me really hit home and showed that we really need to plan where we're going forward. And then priorities and relationships. First and foremost, we need to look after our family. We need to create relationships that, both people win. I've just put the little diagram up there. If you've got an idea, someone might pay for it. Certainly beats the old heads I win, tail you lose scenario. So we need to, remember that everyone along the line needs to make money. We need to understand what drives your business performance and understand what those profit drivers are. And at the end of the day, if you're the farm business manager, it's on you to actually make the decisions. I don't think a lot of the time it's about whether we get those decisions right and wrong all the time. It's about making the decision and making that call when it needs to be made. I've just got an example there when we're in the Netherlands. How do you choose? It's pretty hard to choose. Mine got a flat tyre on the way home, so was it a bad decision or was it just bad luck? I'd argue that how was I meant to know, so it was just bad luck. We need to prioritise the important decisions. And that runs on from the other one. I've just said you might only get 10, really big decisions a year. So of those, we need to make sure we get more right than wrong. I think probably 70%'s a good enough number. If we get 7 out of those 10 big decisions right, we'll be okay. But if we only get 50%, we may as well just be guessing and flipping a coin. Just because you see others do it doesn't mean it's a good idea. And I think if we always let the older generation, teach us how to farm, we're going to farm like the past. So we need to use them wherever we can to evolve, but we've got to be careful that we're on our front foot enough to make sure that we can take on new things and do things, because if we only let the older generation teach us, we're never going to be able to go forward. It's on you. It's just basically, if you make the decision, you take the responsibility, you own your decisions. Risk, just the basic one, take risks when you can, avoid them when you can't. Enjoy the wins. I think we're pretty bad as farmers. We're pretty critical when things go bad and we blame markets and all that sort of jazz, but at the end of the day, we've got to enjoy things when things are going well, because things don't always go that well. Think optimal, not biggest, best or most. So when we think about what we're producing, most people want to think about, the biggest yield per hectare, biggest wool cut per head, and they want the best looking sheep. But ask yourself, is that best for financial performance? So I'd argue you should be looking at, what's my best gross margin per hectare? What is my wool cut per hectare? And what's the most efficient sheep that I can produce to give me the most profit at the end of the day? So I've just got an example there of Farmer A and Farmer B, where we've got to be careful of benchmarking and things like that. I'll flick through this one pretty quick, but there's just an example there of you could be in the top 20% of 4 different categories compared to the Farmer B, who's only in the top 20% of nothing, but you put him in the top 20% of stocking rate, and all of a sudden his gross margin per hectare comes out on top. So we've just got to be careful of those little things, and we need to benchmark against our financial performance as well as our individual stuff. Leadership and personality styles. Greg and Joe touched on this one for me, so I won't spend too much time on this one. You need to know who you're dealing with, and a good example of that is if personality, everyone's got, basically could be categorised into one of these boxes. So know your personality type, and if you're a type, B, and you're going to a meeting with a type D, don't be late, because they're routine driven. They want you to be there 5 minutes early. If you're a type A dealing with a type C, don't ring them up out of the blue and say, can I have $100,000 to, go and buy something? Send them an email. Give them the heads up about what you want to do, because they process things differently. So if you understand who you're dealing with, you'll get a better response out of them. If you're a type C and you're smart enough to go to a type A and say, give me $100,000, they might say, yeah, no worries. That'll be great. And then they don't have time to process it because they think on their feet a lot more. We'll skip through that one. Simple thing, tidy farms, tidy books. Most of the good farms you go to look good. Financial reality, let's not dwell on the things we didn't get. It's no good saying now I should have hung on to those lambs for another 3 weeks and I could have got $300. If you sold them for $250, you probably did okay. You made money, things were okay. Tax is a necessary evil. If we want to create wealth, we need to pay tax. But just be careful where we get our information from. We've just got to be careful, who we take our advice from. I'll just flick through a couple of these. I'm starting to run out of time. So back to the technology. This is just a bit of a bell curve on the technology process. So I think if we look at the curve, I think we want to be in that early adopters category, or bordering on the early majority. We still need people that want to be the innovators and want to adapt and want to grab that new technology, but it can be a very expensive place to operate because you end up buying 10 things and only using one. Whereas if we can get on, that early majority, early adopters line, we can sort of get things that we've seen other people use. Here are a few success stories. failures, things like that. Decide between the 10 and hopefully get the 1 or 2 that hang around. So on farm, so getting back to the on farm bit, what I hope we can get going here is it's just the old scenario of the low hanging fruit. There's so much, so many farms that have got so much low hanging fruit that they need to grab first. So I've just star rated this. So I've got 1 star, 3 star and 5 star. 1 star is what I would expect everyone to be doing. 3 stars where I'd like to think most people can go home and get done. And then the 5 star stuff is, where I see, the really top end producers want to be. So we need to get our pastures right. Our stocking rate, it's no good if we're just not running enough stock or too many stock. We need to check our lambing date. Make sure we're lambing at the right time and give it some serious thought. I've heard too many people tell me why they lamb and they just lamb because they do. Give it some serious thought, and if you do nothing else, when you go home and give your lambing date some serious thought for next year. We need to make sure our fences are right. Water, we want water in every paddock every season. Yards, sheds, get our flock structure right, and ensure we understand our energy and protein requirements of stock, and manage our parasites properly and use drench testing. So that's what I see as a base list. So if you're a producer that's not covering all them, that's what I think you should be aspiring to before you worry about anything else. Into the next one, it's your joining side of things. So get your joining right, make sure you've got lambs inside them. Protein priming, make sure you use it going forward at joining. Preg test, we heard Paul talk about that and how important it is, but we must twin now. I think the days are gone where we can afford just to be wasting our time wetting and drying. If you want to wet and dry, just make a donation to your local charity. Give them a bit of money to the footy club, you'll feel like you're doing some better. Separate your twins and manage them. It's no good to preg test if you're not going to do something with them. It's no good just putting your twins in one mob and your singles in another. Identify your dry ewes at weaning, 1 chance at best. Run ewes in management groups, not necessarily age. Everyone should have the ability to finish their lambs if they so choose. So we need to get a finishing system that means you don't have to sell to someone else if things aren't right. So you need, feeding systems for grain, crops, things like that, so you can cover your bases if you want to hang on to them. And most people these days, I believe, should have stock containment areas whether they use them or not. They're not very hard to build, but they just give us a lot of options going forward, and we're going to see more and more people utilise them. And we should all have adequate fodder supplies for at least 1 year. At a minimum, we need to be able to cover ourselves for 1 year, if not 2. And we need to be looking towards more and more condition scoring. Then the 5-star one, I'll click through pretty quick. That's just the next sort of stage that I see, the really good operators are going to start to focus on. So back to EID, I assume most people in the room are from Victoria, so we've all got electronic tags. So where do I start? So they've made us put them in. It's a terrible thing they made us do. They even made them cost neutral so we didn't have to pay much. But there's a lot of people that haven't come to terms with that yet. So I think we need to get over that. We've got them now, so why don't we see what sort of benefit we can get from them? And it just surprises me that there's been so much negativity around something that's cost us no extra to use. So there's going to be teething problems, they're going to have sale yard issues, the hook system's not going to work right in the abattoirs for a while, but we've got to look forward, and it's going to be a great system when we can work out everyone in the supply chain using it. I think agents need to do more. They need to work with the abattoirs and all those people along the supply chain to ensure that we can get the feedback that we need. And I'd hate to admit it in front of Paul, but New Zealand does things so much better than we do over there, and especially in regard to carcass feedback and processing things. And I think our agency system needs to evolve a little bit to move from your manual drafting systems and guessing weights to knowing weights and trying to get us that feedback that we deserve. And I think I've put there carcass feedback versus ASBVs. We see so much stuff about ASBVs and breeding values, and we do all this work in regard to what we want to breed and why we want to breed it, but we don't get the feedback back in a good enough form to know whether it's working or not. So I think we need to focus on getting the feedback right to know what we produce and know where we can improve, and that'll tell us where to get our ASBVs and where we should be going for our rams and things like that. And if we start the collection process now of all this information, when the whole flock's tagged, so the people that started 2 years ago have got, lambs or weaners tagged and 1.5-year-old ewes. If you start that collection process on them now as a bit of a practice, by the time you've got your whole flock tagged, there'll be systems available to manage that data much, much better. So I see the minimum you should have on every farm at the moment, whether you own it yourself, whether you share it from someone else, or whether you use an agent that can provide that service for you, is a manual weigh crate, some sort of scale head, a stick reader, and then you need access to a computer with Excel to manage some data to a point. That's a bare minimum. And all that, probably $6,000. So I think with the lamb job the way it is at the moment and the wool job, we should be able to afford that within our system. So if you can't afford that on your own, go out with someone else and split the costs a little bit, because we need to know what we're doing and we need to start that process now. So on the data collection side, the areas where we need to start collecting data now, so we are ahead of the game, and I'll put this as your learner plates. So just record what ewes went to what rams and the source of those rams. Lambs from what mob at marking time, so just record your tag numbers you used in that mob. Maiden ewe joining weights, so you can build up a bank of data in regard to where they are at for different years. Preg test data. Identify your dry ewes at lamb marking. Monitor lamb and weaner growth. And a lot of this is not going to seem that useful to you at the time, but once you've got a bank of information, it'll all make sense. Lamb sale weights, which then can lead to individual carcass weights, dressing percentages, and we can monitor our growth rates and feed types if we've got them on fodder crops or in feedlots. And a simple thing like a drench resistance test now with electronic tags is just such a simple process. They just scan them in, drench them with 10 different things and bring them back in a couple of weeks' time. And also, just record that data gives you, the scales give you the ability to save yourself money on something like, drenching and backline and getting our weights right. So the stage 2 of our P plates, once we've got all those learner things right, condition scoring, fleece weighing, lamb weaning weights, joining. So if we could record the weights in and the weights out of the rams, it gives us an idea where our ewes are going during that joining period. And then lamb sale weights, which then we can trace back to where they came from and where maybe those rams came from or which rams they were. And as I said before, if you start now, we'll be ahead going forward. And then we've accumulated this data, and then we can work out how to use it. So going forward, if we had a 5-year-old mob of ewes, you might want to keep half of them. So it'll be simple management tools around shortly that will enable you to go in and say, I want to only keep those ewes that have scanned twins twice in their life, never been dry, and been condition score 2.5 at joining or more for 3 joinings. Stick them in your, doesn't even have to be an auto drafter, stick them in your manual crate, it'll spit out which ones you want. So that's where the money's to be made in the EID system. So I'd say when you go home, I think everyone in this room, and I'm assuming we've probably got the better operators in the room, needs to aspire to at least your 3 stars on your management and your learner plates on your EID. And I think I don't think it's too much to ask. And you don't need to do all of those things, but we just need to make sure we're doing something. And I've just put at the end here, I think it's imperative that we don't just stand here all day today and listen to people talk about things, is that we go home and do something. So I've said there, sometimes you just need to stop acquiring knowledge and start doing. And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day, is that we can all be that little bit better. We can all do that little bit better, but we need to actually go home now and make, some form of action. So just on finishing now, have I got a couple more minutes? I'm done. Yeah, righto. That'll do. Yeah, no, thank you. I'll leave that last one alone.
You take that.